We don't live in the system of justice. We live in a system of decisions. I wanted to protect other families from having to go through 3 years of litigation, discovery, depositions, a hearing after losing the love of their life, and then being disappointed and getting nothing. Like, what could we have done to prevent that from happening? I actually won a Batson hearing, which for those who don't do criminal, it's when the solicitor fires all the black people just because they're black and not for a legitimate reason. And it made the solicitor's office so angry, they scheduled 3 trials for the next week in a row. We all become better as humans because of all of the rich experiences we all have pulled together and shaken down. How are we supposed to help other people learn if we aren't willing to share that?
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. Really excited about our guest today. We've got Michelle Wilson, who is an attorney here in Georgia. She has Wilson Legal, and she'll explain better than I will, but she's got an elderly law no, an elder law and estate planning practice. We had a little joke offline. So anyway, sorry about that. Couldn't resist. Michelle, actually we didn't hang out, but I think you were like a year behind me or so at Georgia Law School. So,
It's true. Class of 04 for me. I think
03 for me. So
03, yeah.
But it was good to connect recently, and, we'll talk about your book, which I really like. That's really something cool. We're going to get into that and your firm and all that. So I hand it over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us about your firm, where you're located, and what you do.
Sure. So we're located in Cumming, Georgia, which is a short, if it's no traffic, 35-mile drive from Atlanta, north, a little bit northwest, near one of the bigger lakes. We've been here since 2008 is when I opened the firm. And I grew up here. So I'm, I guess, a little bit of a classic hometown attorney, but with a specialty. We specialize in elder law, estate planning, special needs planning. We also do business succession in our estate planning, and then uncontested probate cases. And our goal is to help 10,000 individuals, families, and businesses by 2035. So 10 years from last year, 2034. And we're still 9,500 or so from reaching that goal, but we'll be keeping track, and we just really enjoy helping our local community and the families in it.
Well, it's interesting. You grew up in Cumming, which now a really good place to be, I think, for estate planning. But when you grew up, it was a lot different, right? I mean, you've probably seen a lot of change, and for those not from Atlanta, there's a lot of wealth that has moved up that way.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember Shel Silverstein's Where the Sidewalk Ends book.
Oh, yeah.
From like elementary school. That was Forsyth County back in the 1980s. Like, the sidewalk ended. We had 2 neighborhoods, Polo Fields and Aberdeen. And Mom and Dad built the house in 1981. And I remember my dad will tell you, made fun of him because he thought he would never get his money out of that property that he bought. And they're still sitting on 18 acres in South Forsyth.
Whoa. In
between 2 neighborhoods. And so Forsyth County, for those who aren't familiar with the area, it basically doubled in size every 10 years from 1981 to about 2001. 2003 was one of the top places for people to live. And now it doesn't double every 10 years, I don't think, but it's still a pretty high growth area.
Is that what I know? A lot of those areas up there that just had the super growth, it seemed like every couple of years they're like building a new 5,000 person high school, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to give you a frame of reference, I graduated from South Forsyth in 97, and we had a class of 204. And I always kind of kid around that 10 people either got pregnant or dropped out because we originally had 214. My baby sister was born 9 years after me, and she graduated in 2008 at the Gwinnett Arena with 1,200 kids in her class.
Jeez.
So yeah, lots of change.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. So you grew up in, Atlanta area, and then at some point you said, I'm going to go to law school. So what made you think you wanted to go to law school?
What triggered that? People ask you what you want to do when you grow up, and you just pick a career. And I can't tell you what made me pick either being a pilot or an attorney when I was in 7th grade. But my dad's response was, "Why do you want to be a sleazy attorney?" And by the way, I got my pilot's license and it cost me like what would be 40,000 in today's dollars. And you could have so many hours before somebody pays you to do that, Shell. Let's not spend the money on that. So that was kind of put to the side, I guess, right? He wanted me to do something that was reasonable and not those two things. And so I got a speeding ticket my junior year of undergrad. I went to school out of state in South Carolina at Southern Wesleyan and got the speeding ticket when I was home visiting and totally missed the court date. So I ended up having a hearing date that I missed. And I thought it was just you pay the fine on all speeding tickets. Well, not all of them, apparently. And so mom and dad made me hire my own attorney. And the narrative that I wrote about what happened impressed him. And he said, "Have you ever thought about law school?" And I said, "Well, yeah, once, but it was kind of shot down." And so I went ahead and applied because I was doing business administration and I wanted a master's degree that would be broad and not limit my options. And so I went ahead and did the LSAT and applied and I got into UGA. And I kind of think it was because nobody from Southern Wesleyan had ever applied to go to school at UGA and they could add a school to their list of, alumni schools. But I kind of went to law school, honestly, Jonathan, to prove to my dad that I could do it.
And you did.
You
did.
Spite's a motivator.
So did you avoid jail time on that ticket that you skipped out on?
That's an embarrassing story. So I was a little naive. And in South Carolina, the number on the ticket that you call was for Forsyth County's most wanted. And I feel like they got the scariest guy on the force to record the voicemail for that. It was like, "Thank you for calling Forsyth County's most wanted. If you have information about anybody who's, and, I have a speeding ticket. I'm not one of Forsyth County's most wanted." But I ended up just going down and like turning myself in to take care of the ticket. So I spent like 4 hours in the holding cell and had to make that embarrassing phone call to mom and dad. "Hey, can you come get me out of jail?" And of course, they were less than impressed with their eldest daughter being the one who's doing this, right? But I mean, it all turned out okay. It was back when, Georgia now doesn't do this, but they used to expunge an arrest or a charge for people who only get in trouble once. And so it's expunged now. It's not on my record, but yeah, I know what the inside of the jail cell looks like.
But you had to disclose it on your character and fitness, didn't you?
I did. Yes. And, my fingerprints were taken and yeah.
It's funny. I'm like applying to a couple jurisdictions now to waive in. And so I'm going through it again. And it's like, they're like, "Have you ever blah, blah, blah." And they're like, err on the side of disclosure.
Right.
And one of them is asking about tickets, moving violations. And I know I got one, but I can't remember when. And I know it was within the last 10 years. So it's to the point now where I'm too damn old to remember these things. And I'm just going to say, I got one somewhere.
So pull my driving record.
Exactly.
You have permission.
Exactly.
Right. And just let them check it out.
Okay.
We all have these lessons.
I know. So you end up at Georgia, you go to law school. So what did you do after law school? I saw in your bio that at some point you worked at the public defender's office. Did you go straight there after law school, or was there something in between?
No. And it's kind of an interesting story. So I wanted to open my own practice, but I don't know if you remember Mary Radford, who used to write the treatises, and she's now passed that on to someone else. And she also taught the Trust and Estates course at UGA. She actually told her class, "Don't try to be just a trust and estates attorney. You won't make enough money to make a living." So that scared me enough. I said, "All right, I'll go get a job." So I went back to my hometown of Cumming and I practiced with the guy who said I should go try law school. Same guy. We did what I call door law. Have you ever heard of door law? Yeah. If you walk in the front door with a check, we take your case.
Right.
Yeah. So basically general practice, right? So it's like 40% domestic, 40% criminal. I did some panel work because that was before PD offices, and then contracts, some probate, that kind of thing. So small claims. And then about a year and a half after that, I got recruited to Atlanta to work for a high-end divorce attorney who ended up having a bit of a addiction habit. We had to force him into rehab and close his practice. So we were handling phone calls from really angry clients who didn't have anything done on their cases. So I went to go work as a contract attorney for an insurance defense and corporate firm for about 6 months, tried a couple of insurance defense cases, and then from there went to the public defender's office in Douglas County because I just needed a job I could do without having to think very hard for a little while because I was a little burned out at that point. So yeah, that was kind of the journey.
I don't know how much you can say about this, but okay, so you went to work for this family lawyer that you said you had to get. Who was we? I guess, first of all, who
Oh, so it was me and an associate and like a secretary and a paralegal who worked from home and would take documents and put them in his mailbox because he didn't like to come in the office. And I kind of commend the bar on this a little bit because they really showed through that experience that they support attorneys that are dealing with addiction
mm-hmm.
because he didn't lose his license. And I don't even think he went through like the reprimand or hearing process. I think as long as he was moving towards doing rehab, so like that was a non-negotiable. You have to go, even if you don't want to go, because you do have this issue in order to keep your license.
So how did he take it when you got, I guess, did you guys have an intervention? Is that how y'all handle it?
We did, and we had to end up changing the elevator code so that he couldn't come up to the office and take money out of the firm. And I wasn't a part of that, like right next to him interaction. I was more support staff, I guess, during that process. So, yeah.
Wow. I'm sure addiction is a big issue in the legal, and I'm sure there are people out there that might find themselves in that situation. So, any advice?
So I would say just be honest with the bar, ask for help. And there was another attorney that we did a lot of shared cases with that was on the floor above the firm where I was at. And he stepped in and helped out a lot. So I think there's something to be said for creating those relationships with other attorneys, whether they do the same kind of work you do or not, because you never know where an attorney's story, or maybe if somebody's looking to retire soon and they've got some extra time, could help with supporting somebody that might be going through something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. So you get out and then you go through that, and then you get burned out, which I understand. That's crazy. So then you end up at the public defender's office for a while. So how was that? What's that like?
That was actually my easiest interview because the person they fired actually pulled a gun when his really fancy SUV got repoed in the courthouse parking lot. So the threshold for getting that job was, well, I don't think she's going to pull a gun on anyone, so we should be okay.
So in that position, are you trying a lot of cases, or do you?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I actually won a Batson hearing, which for those who don't do criminal, it's when the solicitor fires all the black people just because they're black and not for a legitimate reason. And it made the solicitor's office so angry. They scheduled 3 trials for the next week in a row with me.
For you, just to...
For me.
Wow.
Yeah, happy weekend prepping. So yeah, lots of cases there. But, honestly, after doing general practice, I had been trying cases for several years. I was in court when I first got out of law school, probably 3 or 4 days a week from the beginning. Like it was that old trial by fire. Here's your file, Michelle. Go look up the rules and then show up at your hearing. You've got to go on Thursday, right?
Did you want to be a trial lawyer, or was it just sort of that's where you ended up?
I did. I actually did the 3rd year practice act at Hall County and tried 2 jury trials before I graduated law school for the DA's office up there.
That's cool. Well, you're not trying cases anymore, are you?
No, I'm not. And the reason, well, 2 reasons for that. One, I had a case that almost made me quit, probably about, 6 years after getting my license. And it was this insurance interpleader case that involved a fellow who worked for our local train station. And he had wanted to change his life insurance to pay off the mortgage on the house and his new truck, so his second wife wouldn't have to go get another job. They'd been married for probably more than 10 years at that point. And she was another like tough police officer type person. And the daughter from the first marriage claimed that the insurance was supposed to go to her. And so in that case, the insurance company says, I don't know who I'm going to pay. We're going to put the money in the court. You guys duke it out, right? And the judge, even though we had an overt act and we had evidence of intent with his handwritten note, so I had a canary copy of his signed change of beneficiary form and his handwritten note. The judge said because the MARTA looked at their files 3 years after the form was lost, that was adequate. Well, when I appealed it, the Court of Appeals gave me a one-liner and said, you haven't given us a legal issue to review, so we can't review it. So all the money, and it wasn't a huge policy, but it would have made a big difference for her, right? And this daughter from the first marriage had not talked to him in half of her lifetime, had never used his last name, did not show up to his funeral, had no communication. Her mom sent flowers, right? Her mom was a chiropractor, had, wealth. It really made me lose that romantic, idealistic impression of the legal system. And so now I tell people we don't live in the system of justice. We live in a system of decisions. And the decision makers, the judges, they're impacted by their own biases and their own political opinions. And you don't know how that's going to affect you and your family. And if you don't do planning, then you're running the risk that you might not have the result that you are looking for or that you want. So I call my practice a Disney practice, Jonathan. So I come to work every day to make people's wishes come true.
Well, that's so okay. So the practice that you have now, is it a result of sort of that case, or were you already
Yes.
sort of interested in this area?
So I've always been interested in this area since working really for that first attorney, because he was using the same 5-page will form he'd used for 30 years back when he learned how to be a lawyer on cassette tape because he was an Eastern pilot. And of course, Eastern went belly up, right? And I think he even became an attorney before the bar was required. So, and I asked him, like, why don't you improve this will to better protect the clients? Like, there's not a whole lot here. We could do more to protect the clients better. And his response was, and it was the same as a lot of attorneys in this area, I don't make any money on the will. It's a loss leader. I make the money helping people go through the probate process. So I'll do the will almost for free because I want them to come back and ask me for help to go through this court process. And I just feel like we can do better. Like, we can do better for our clients than that.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but as far as planning goes, I wanted to protect other families from having to go through 3 years of litigation, discovery, depositions, a hearing after losing the love of their life, and then being disappointed and getting nothing. Like, what could we have done to prevent that from happening in that case? We could have done planning ahead of time. And we actually have a funding concierge at our firm that holds our clients accountable for changing and updating their insurance policies and their bank accounts so that their beneficiaries are the people they want them to be. And so that their wishes do
tell me
come
about
true.
that. This person at your firm, what's the
Yeah.
mechanism? What's the process? How does that work?
So funding is a problem for a lot of estate planning attorneys. So all of our estate planning attorneys listening are going to be like, yeah, that's a problem for me too, because it's common. People get their documents done and they just want there to be some magic wand that magically makes everything work the way that we talked about. And that doesn't work. You have to align all of your assets with your trust, and your trust has to be named as a beneficiary or an owner in order for the bank to know where that money goes when you die, right? And if the bank doesn't know, you're going through probate. So I have tried several things. In October of 2023, I said, that's it. I need to hire somebody to hold clients accountable. And that needs to be somebody other than me, because an attorney doesn't need to say, hey, you said you were going to add the beneficiary for your checking by Wednesday of last week. Have you got that done yet? Right. So I actually had, when you have kids, you become friends with their parents. And one of my daughter's friends' moms was standing in my driveway. And she was saying, I've been a stay-at-home mom long enough. I need to find something to do while the kids are in school because we need to have some more income coming into our household. She manages her spouse and her 3 kids and holds them accountable for all of their different activities and school assignments, and is super sweet to talk to on the phone. So I said, I might have an opportunity for you. Do you want to try coming to work for me? Now, she had to learn all of the Microsoft Suite stuff, Excel, Word. And I also hired my neighbor and my friend that I've been trying to get to work for me for a long time, like 4 years, to come work for me part-time as my billing clerk, because I was out for surgery last year. So I needed someone who could do the me stuff on the financial side. She also was able to educate my funding concierge, stay-at-home mom, about what the word beneficiary meant, right? And what pay on death and transfer on death means at a bank, so that she could talk to our clients about that. So basically, at the end of our process, when the documents are done and we deliver the documents to a client, we have a spreadsheet called the personal asset spreadsheet that divides the assets into categories: cash accounts, investments, IRAs, life insurance, real estate, businesses. And we go through each category and we talk about what we're going to do to connect the trust with each asset. Is it going to be an owner or a beneficiary? And then we ask the client, do you want to be responsible for that change, or would you like Kristen to help you? She's our funding concierge. And by help you, I mean, for our older clients who are in their 70s, Kristen will meet them at the bank and sit down at the bank and hand the certificate of trust to the banker and the copy of the power of attorney, so they have everything they need to know who their agents are and who their beneficiary will be, and then makes that conversation and that change really easy.
Wow.
And when I say easy, when Truist did their merger, the Truist banker that we met with did not know how to print confirmation that the trust was the beneficiary from his new computer system. He had to get the bank manager to help him with that.
Jeez.
And our client would have given up on it and walked out, but we were insistent on getting something to confirm the change was made. So that's what the funding concierge does.
Well, I mean, shoot, as you describe it, hell, I'm a lawyer, and if you told me to do this, I guess I could probably figure it out, but I'd probably get confused going to the bank too. I mean, I can't imagine if I'm a, 80-something-year-old non-lawyer, I'm going to get really confused. That's actually a pretty cool service. I've never heard of anybody doing that. Do other people do this?
There are actually people you can outsource to. And if you have any listeners that want, I can share with you the information of the vendor we use when we want to outsource it. We have a vendor who will get the forms from the life insurance companies and the investment companies and fill them out for the client and send them back to us. And we just call the client and say, time to come in and sign your documents. And then we send them in for them. And for busy people like you and me, to get this financial alignment when you do a trust-based plan, you have to take a PTO day and just you and your wife go to the banks together, because you got to show up together on joint accounts, and just go someplace nice for lunch, because it's a hassle. It's not so much that we can't figure it out. We're capable. It's that there are other things in our life we need to spend time on. And the question the client needs to answer is, what's more important to you? How valuable is your time? Would you like to spend $150 per account and we'll do it for you, and all you have to do is come in and sign? Or do you want to do it yourself and we'll just hold you accountable?
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Well, let's go back. So you had this case that made you almost want to quit being a lawyer.
Yes.
And instead, it sort of led you down this path. So how long after that did you decide, I'm going to go start my own firm and it's going to be a elder law trust and estate firm?
So yeah, that case made me think it doesn't matter how smart I am or how right I am. I even hired another attorney to second chair me on the hearing, and I did absolutely nothing wrong, and we still lost. So it was basically like, like if I can't get the reward of actually succeeding when I'm right, like why bother? So that was when I was doing contract work for another firm in Atlanta, Gorby, Reeves and Peters. So then I was a public defender for a year and a half. And at the end of that year and a half at the public defender's office, I was getting ready to be promoted to the felony court level. And I was 29. I was not being paid enough to really make living in my Buckhead apartment feasible for the long term, if that makes sense. And I wanted to do something big before I turned 30. And my dad was a little bit of too much of a slow mover. So I found this real estate investor from South Carolina, and I decided to uproot, move to South Carolina, partner with him, and create what we called an armchair real estate investing business. So back then, you could set up a call center and take leads on people who wanted to get rid of their real estate, buy the real estate, but with wraparound financing, with like a wraparound trust. And basically they keep the first mortgage, but you fill the house with a tenant after replacing carpet and doing paint. And then you find a private lender to be the first mortgage holder and then get the original owner out. And then you just build up a book of business and either flip the house or the investment or keep it and have it be part of your bankroll, right? Well, that was in January of 2008.
Yeah.
And we all know what happened in April of 2008. So it took me 4 months to get $40,000 in debt and be living off of my partner's food stamps. And I will never forget the day I was sitting in front of Kroger in South Carolina, and I couldn't even afford to go in and buy a Coke. And I had not asked for help from my parents at this point, right? Like I was super stubborn. And then my friend Emily said, if you do not come back, I am going to come up and get you. You have until like a week or two from now. So it's good to have friends like that.
Yeah. So you came back, and that's when you opened your shop?
Well, I came back and I was living with my parents, 29 years old, no job, 40,000 in debt, no prospects. And the same guy, my dad, who said, why do you want to be a sleazy lawyer, came up to me and said, why don't you try starting your own firm now? And so that was, I started researching. I called like probably 6 or 7 estate planning attorneys in Atlanta. I found out you actually can make a living just doing estate planning. That was a relief. And I ended up getting connected with Wealth Council, which is a national network of estate planning attorneys that offers a lot of educational courses that are pretty good, but usually connected to their software. So you kind of need their software to understand what they're talking about. And then I also got connected with Eden Rose Brown, who's an estate planning attorney out in Oregon, who's really successful, used to be a big speaker. I called her out of the blue. You don't know me. This is what I'm trying to do. She offered to let me stay at her house and shadow her at her firm for 2 weeks. So I went to my granddad, borrowed $10,000, bought airplane tickets to the Wealth Council immersion course in Texas and a set of CDs to their basic trust immersion course, and then flew to Oregon and shadowed Eden for 2 weeks. I bought her business model. So she had like a practice model with like engagement letter samples and like client relationship management stuff. Came home, spent about $8,000 on letterhead and the document envelopes and the software. And I started in the upstairs room above my parents' garage that was not heated in September. So September, October, I was typing with the tips of the gloves cut off because there was an inch gap under the window and an inch gap under the door. And so you couldn't keep the heat on in there. And it was cold.
Oh my
In the
gosh.
fourth quarter that year, I think we had our first client and made our first $1,500.
And that was so sweet, wasn't it? Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what year was that?
2008.
Wow. Well, you've come a long way. So it was
I feel like it.
so a couple things there. So you didn't give up. You invested in yourself, and it's turned out pretty well, it sounds like. So let's talk about, from those humble beginnings with the cut off gloves and the cold room to now. So what does your firm look like now?
So right now, well, we are $1 million law firm. We were under $1 million last year, but we did $1 million in 2023. We have a team of 15 people. 7 of those are professional witnesses. So we actually give our retired clients jobs of $20 an hour to come in and be signers at our signing meetings, which allows our core staff to stay busy with what they already have on their plate. We've got a core staff of about 8, 2 attorneys, including me. We've got 2 reception intake, and one of my virtual assistants, like she's actually an assistant manager of the company now. She's been with me 3 years. They're in South Africa, and a drafting assistant in the Philippines. They've all been with me for over 3 years now. A paralegal, and then my funding concierge, and then my part-time billing clerk that works about a day and a half at the office. So yeah, it's different.
It is. And I was looking at your website, and it's a little different than most lawyer websites I've seen. And what I mean by that is you're there, but most lawyer websites, it's all about me. It's all about me. And yours appears more about, it's about the team and the entire firm. And so what was your thought process behind that? I assume that was by design. You tell me.
That's such a great question. Yeah. And that was absolutely by design. I do everything very, very deliberately in life, which doesn't bode well for me if I ever were tried for a crime because I am so deliberate about everything. So everything would have mens rea, right?
But you'd get away with it because you would have planned it all, right?
Right? Maybe. But I digress. So the website is based on a book, and you've probably read it before, the Story Brand book, which is based on the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. So I actually hired a company to keep me from saying too much because I tend to put too much content on a website. I wanted to simplify the message, and I want it to be team oriented because my definition of business success has nothing to do with me being the center of attention. It has to do with me owning a business that runs without me because I have so many other ideas and dreams. I need to be able to be out of production and out of having to be involved in the day-to-day in order to be able to achieve everything I wanted to achieve. So up until probably 2018, even 2022 probably, I was most easily found online if people searched my name, not if people searched estate planning, because people would go to my website to credit check me and make sure I was a real person and somebody trustworthy. Well, then they wanted to come in and only talk to me. Well, it's important for me to be able to provide service for 10,000 people in 10 years. I need to be able to have people who are not lawyers help with parts of the process. And by allowing a team to help and having that team approach, we can respond faster. We can answer questions faster. We can efficiently and effectively complete estate plans, even if I'm sick. Like I was out for surgery this last year. I was out emergency contact only for 40 days. And my firm had its highest grossing month in its history the month that I was out.
That is awesome.
So
that is awesome.
That really speaks to the systems and the processes that you set up, right? But to me, that's business success. Business success is having something that runs without you.
Well, I think it's brilliant. I noticed it for sure. And I always tell everybody to listen, law firm owners at least, the less your firm depends on you, the more valuable it is. And
can I share with you, Jonathan, the joy, like when I hired my 2 South African virtual assistants and my Filipino assistant, it was in 2021 and I couldn't find people to come in person to answer my phone. And I felt like I didn't have any help. But after I hired the 3 of them, I started focusing on developing my team and encouraging them. And we would read self-development books like The 4 Agreements, for example. And then we would talk about the ideas in it. And being able to pour into a team to help all of us be better people, it's so rewarding. Like at the end of the year, when you have because I was really worried at first. I have these people on these other continents that I'm not even seeing. How do I create a culture that doesn't make them feel left out? Right. And at the end of that first year, my assistant from the Philippines came to me and said, "Thank you, Michelle. I feel like I'm a part of a team that's doing something." And I feel like he felt like he had buy-in, even though we've never met each other. And being able to do that and see people grow, it's amazing. I think every attorney who's starting their practice, don't stop at just being a solo, because I did stop for a long time because I had a really bad partnership experience. I didn't want to trust anybody with anything. I licked my own envelopes for 8 years after opening this firm. But I would have missed out on so much if I didn't hire a coach to help me grow faster and help me do things that scared me.
So let's talk about the culture and the team building. So you do this book thing. What else do you do? Especially, nowadays more and more, you've got these overseas VAs and overseas people, or certainly virtual, maybe not in the office. So what sorts of other things do you do to help sort of generate that culture, the team, all that?
So for the last couple years, I went through a staffing workshop, and in the staffing workshop, they recommended that you do a one-on-one meeting every month, which is a 30-minute meeting. And it's directed by the employee. The employee gets to talk about what they want to talk about. But the idea of that is checking in with them on their personal goals so that you can make sure that the professional goals are still in alignment. Because what I like to tell people is I don't expect you to be with me forever. Like 3 to 5 years would be awesome. More than that would be amazing. But at some point, if your interests diverge from our interest, I want to help you get to that next stepping stone and have enough notice so I can actually hire somebody that you can train to replace you, and do that on an amicable basis, right? Instead of, usually the situation is they stop doing their job as well and then you fire them because they're messing things up, right? And then it's a cleanup phase for 30 days. And then you spend the next 6 months finding somebody to fill in the spot, right? So the one-on-one helps you stay connected with your team and what their personal situation is. And it lets them get to know you a little. And then we do a 90-day review, performance review. And I should do more in those than I do currently. Right now, it's a self-evaluation that we discuss every 90 days. But for my intake and reception staff, I should be listening to calls before their 90-day performance review. In fact, every week, and having suggestions and additional trainings I can offer them. The other thing I want to find out in the performance review is, what are your interests? Because if the firm needs a marketing manager like you do, and I've got somebody who's interested in doing parts of what would be included in that job description, maybe I can divide that job description task list among 2 or 3 people I already have on my team until I can find the right person to take on that role full time. Right. And so it's a way of managing tasks to keep people feeling that they're growing and that they have a future and that they're making progress. And I think that's how you retain people. It's not just pay. I've seen people just pay people more and their employees leave after a few years. And so you invest all that time and extra money and you're not retaining people. But if you can help them grow personally and help them still reach their goals, even if it's a little divergent from their original reason they were hired, you keep them happier and challenged.
I like that. You need to teach a class on this. I like that.
Okay.
You need to do a workshop.
I'd be happy to.
You need to do a workshop. I'm serious. That's really...
And I'll tell you, I stopped doing one-on-ones for like 3 months last year because I got too busy. And I felt the disconnection, Jonathan. Like, do it. Like, try it. Test it for a quarter. Yes, it takes a whole day out of your schedule, which, yikes, it's a lot, right? But do it and make sure that your employees, if they're in an office with other people, have an office they can go to where they can talk to you privately, like with headphones or something, without being overheard. But yeah, I'm happy to do a class. If you want me to do one, let's figure it out.
Maybe we'll do a webinar. I'm serious. That's really cool. I mean, I like what I'm hearing. Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. So let's move to something else that I like. So when I met you, you gave me a copy of your book. It's right here. You got one there. So
yep. I got one here. Yep.
I like the concept. I've started it. Really cool. So why don't you tell us about the book, what it's called, tell us sort of the inspiration for it, and what is it?
So the book is called So I Can Love You Longer, A Mother's Message to Her Daughter. I wrote it because in 2017, I did the BRCA1 test, which is a test for women to be able to find out if you've got a genetic marker for different kinds of cancer. And basically, if the marker shows up positive, what it means is you have a much higher chance of getting cancer. So I'll give you an example. if you have a marker for breast cancer, instead of the normal 10 or 15% everybody else has as a chance of getting it, you have an 85% chance of getting it. And if you get it, it'll be the aggressive kind that you might not survive, right? So I'm a single mom and I'm self employed. What happens if something happens to me? My daughter now has to live with her dad, who I divorced for reasons that I feel were legitimate. And it would make life difficult for her because A, she wouldn't have her mom, and B, she's got a different house to be in, right? And maybe less interaction with my family as a result. So basically, what I decided is I would plan to do the surgeries intentionally and have the support staff at the firm so the business could still run. Because, if you're out sick unintentionally, it causes chaos in the firm. You got to reschedule appointments, people are angry, stuff doesn't get done. You lose money because you've got to refer stuff out, maybe, right? Or people leave and go somewhere else, and maybe you get bad Google reviews. Like, it's not fun. So I figured if I planned it, I could get the surgeries done. And I did the book so that if the second big surgery, which was the breast reconstruction surgery, went wrong, that she would have a piece of me to hang on to. So I basically made this list of all the things that I would want to tell her. And I'm sorry.
Take your time.
I found a really great writing coach, and I basically gave her the list. And she said, "Hey, Michelle," I was like, "I don't know how to rate this, but here's what I want to say." And she said, "We've got about 12 topics here, right? We can divide that up in months, and then we'll make a spreadsheet." And then basically what I did, Jonathan, is I scheduled 2 hours on Sunday nights and 2 hours on Thursday nights, and I wrote 2 letters each time. And I would take myself to like a Wild Wing, and I'd be the nerdy dork with the laptop on Thursday night at 5:30 on the patio table with a Blue Moon beer and wings that I had to eat and then wipe my fingers up because you can't type with wing sauce. But and I just sit out there and I'd listen to music, and I'd listen to music, or I'd just hear the ambient noise of people, right? So you wouldn't be at home alone. And I just typed for about 2 hours.
Wow.
And then I would go over it on Saturdays. She would help me edit, and then she helped me get connected with a publisher. So I figured out how to save the money for the. Okay, here's the other thing. If you write your own book, make it slightly littler than this one, because this length was like $6,000 extra because of the page length. But anyway, so the editor helped me go through the publishing process. That was a year-long experience. And then I also recorded it on Audible, so it would be in my voice.
Now that's cool.
And
That's cool. I did not know that.
it is, and it was definitely a challenge. So the recommended place was my master bedroom closet, right? Because it's full of clothes that absorb the sound. And I had my Yeti microphone that isn't working today. And I learned that you have to sit like not speaking directly into it, and that you should drink lemon water to help with phlegm, because your mouth and throat make noises you don't realize they make until you speak into a very sensitive mic. And it was in 2-hour sessions. So we did 10 2-hour sessions that summer, and it was the year we did 1,000,000. And I was like, I don't have time for this, right? Like, how am I going to, in the morning during the business day? You can't do it after hours. You can't do it on the weekends. And there are a lot of people in my neighborhood with big trucks, and there happens to be a stop sign right at the corner where my master bedroom closet is.
God.
Are you here? Are you seeing where this is going?
Oh, yeah.
And so depending on the time of day, the trucks would come and stop, and then they would, right? And you'd be doing your chapter, and then you'd have to stop and re-record it. So I had to re-record probably 2/3 of that book.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't know if
I
did your
felt like
voice give
giving
out?
up,
Did
like-
your voice give out? I mean, that's a lot of sustained talking.
It was 2-hour increments 2 or 3 times a week. So it wasn't continuous for that reason, because your voice has to recover. But yeah, there were a couple of days where I was like, I had a cold or something, and it was just hard. And there were just a couple of days where I didn't want to do it anymore. Like, do you ever do projects and you're just like, I'm not sure I won't have it in me to finish this?
Yeah. Well, it's, I
So-
think I mentioned to you, like, I am beginning the process for a book.
Don't you already have one out?
Well,
Contract?
I've got that small one that I did some years ago. It's sort of legal. It's like a legal book, small, but it's a legal book. But I want to do like a real book, and it's,
Okay.
it's a little scary. That's why I'm in terms of the amount of work. I mean, yours is almost 300
Yeah.
pages, and I'm like, dang, it's a big.
And when you hire a publisher, Jonathan, you are expected to read through it, to review it in a weekend. Like, they want it back
Yeah. Wow. So let's talk about the book a little bit. So how did you, you said you knew sort of what you wanted to talk to her about. There's a lot of letters and I love that. I love the format. I love how you did it.
Oh,
I
good.
mean, it's really
Thank
cool.
you.
I mean, what a gift to her and your
Yeah.
grandkids and anybody else. I mean, really. I mean, it's
Yeah, my mom doesn't like how she was portrayed. She feels like I made her into like a drill sergeant is what she calls it. But I mean, I feel like it turned out well, and I feel like the experience was better with the publisher because I had the writing coach, so a lot of the editing that was basic was already done.
mhm.
So I definitely highly recommend that. But yeah, what's your question about content? Do you have any specifics?
Well, yeah. So, just for people who hadn't seen it, you have it broken, like you said, broken into months
Hmm.
with sort of a general topic or theme, and then you have
Hmm.
letters to your daughter within it. So, how
Yes.
did you pick the big themes? Well, let me back up. Did you pick the big themes first, then do the subtopics for the letters, or did you have all the subtopics and then you said, all right, this is how we're gonna put them together?
It was a mishmash of both. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person when I'm reading a magazine article, I typically start about a third of the way from the top. Like, I always start in the middle. And so we created the big topics in some instances out of the smaller topics that I wanted to talk about. So there was some rearranging. And that's where another person's perspective is helpful, right? And then I did have to fill in, there were definitely some chapters that were harder to write. Like the December Faith and Hope, it's actually about death and dying and how to explain that to an 8-year-old.
Mm, yeah. Well, the cool thing about the format is that you can just pick it up anywhere and just read any
You
letter.
can.
You don't have to read it in
You
order.
can. And the other thing that's fun is there's activities at the end of each chapter that I think anybody of any age can really get something from. So basically, from 2018 or 2017, when I did this BRCA1 test, in 2018, July, I joined How to Manage a Small Law Firm, which is a coaching company. And they always do this quarterly meeting every quarter where they go an inch wide and a mile deep on a topic that helps you run your business. And it's structured kind of like a corporation would be on how to grow. And the owner got on the stage, and I don't know if you've ever been in a church or a big gathering, and the first sentence the keynote speaker says, it's like they're only talking to you. Like the spotlight you could be the only person in the room. And he said, "You have a right to be free." And it was that moment that I realized I didn't have to stay in a toxic relationship, and then I could actually do what I needed to do as far as the surgeries, went. So it's that awareness that you can that really starts the steps in moving forward. And I read so many self-help books and listened to so many people, podcasts, coaches, and I wanted to put all of that amazing stuff into this book so that she wouldn't just have my stories, but she would be able to read from all the people that I respect and that I learned from, especially during that 5 or 6 year period, right? So that's the other thing I think that would be beneficial to anybody who picks it up is there's books in here, like you've heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad, but there's a book called The Wealthy Gardener that I think is really only a download now. I don't think you can get a print book. And it actually includes the idea of financial leverage versus regular debt, which Rich Dad Poor Dad doesn't get into. So I feel like it goes a little further in that financial basics education you would want your kids to have, or even you might want to have, right? If you don't feel like that's your special, wheelhouse. So I like it because I think it could help anybody of any age, honestly. And I hope that it gives ideas to other parents, whether they're business owners or lawyers or non-lawyers, on what they could write for their own kids.
So, how old's your daughter now?
She's 11.
So she's read it?
No,
No?
not the whole thing. She's heard me talk. She was at most of the coaching meetings when I was writing it. She's heard me talk about it a million times. She has listened to a lot of it actually, because after you record the Audible book, you have to listen to all your recordings before they publish it. And so the only time I had to listen to them was at night when she was going to bed. And I would just play them on the laptop, and we'd get to the end of a letter and she'd be like, "No, mom, do the next one. Do the next one." So she's probably listened to about a third or half of it at this point.
So, is she old enough to appreciate what you've done here?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if she'd give me the honest answer. That might be something you'd need to ask her.
Well, pretty soon she's just going to disagree with everything you say and say it's the worst book ever. But
Indeed. Well, this is going to be this is going to be part of a series. So the next book is going to be so you can grow up and do big things, and it's going to be a book on adulting that's going to have a video portion with interviews with my heroes that know how to do the ordinary things. And then the next one's going to be so you can take care of me when I get old. And it's going to have all of the tips and tricks for taking care of elder folks who need that extra level of help, and maybe a lot of the stories that I've run into and the ways that I think it could be done better than the ways I'd like it done for me. So there's 2 more books in the hopper that are going to get started this year. The next one has to get started this year because the trademark people want it, or the copyright people want it. But my goal was to create it. It's kind of like when you take a kid to a restaurant and all they eat is cheese dip and chips, but you feel like as a parent you're required by some parental law to order them something with protein, like chicken fingers or hamburger. And half the time they don't eat it, but you feel like you've done your job by like actually putting it in front of them and they have the option to eat. I'm not going to force her to read it because I don't want to do that, but I hope she does at some point.
She will. So,
and I'll leave that to her.
So you wrote this, for a very personal reason to give to your daughter, but I'm curious what the reception has been out in the world. What do you do with the book, and how do you promote it, or do you, and what's reception been?
There's different responses, right? Like there's a scale of responses. And here's the thing. One of my favorite poems is the Ralph Waldo Emerson poem on success in life. And that sometimes your success is just having a garden or raising a child or doing something good in the community. I see people every day, and I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman, I'm not going to share his name. He played for a symphony orchestra, and he felt like his life wasn't very valuable because he didn't really do enough to make the world a better place. And I really wanted, and I might still do this, talk to his wife and find out who he knew at different levels of his life and get them to write letters about his impact on them. Every person's life is valuable. And there's another book people can get if they want to know a little bit about how this could work. It's called Humans of New York. There was an amateur photographer who would go around and just take pictures of people and ask them if there was one nugget of wisdom you could share with humanity, what would it be? And some people shared a little bit, some people shared a lot. And it's all kinds of diverse people. Like if you look at that book, they're from all over the place. They don't all look the same, right? And Forsyth County, if you know this area, has been accused of looking the same during certain periods of its history. And I believe that a lot of my clients sometimes don't recognize their value. So part of the reason I did this was to encourage people to understand that they are valued. And even if they don't have a lot of money, that value, if they don't write it down and give it to the other humans that come after them, that our world is going to be less valuable because of it. We all become better as humans because of all of the rich experiences we all have pulled together and shaken down, right? And then applied to other people's lives. And I don't want anyone to think they're not valued.
It's interesting. I've discussed this with people before. I may have done posts on LinkedIn on it or whatever, but there have been times in my life, where someone says to me, 10 years ago, we had this conversation and I've never forgotten it, blah, blah, blah. And I don't even remember it. But to them, it made a really big impact. And then I have been in that same situation too, where I've had, a mentor or someone tell me something or say something, whatever it is, and it probably was a throwaway to them. They don't remember it at all.
But it impacted you for life.
For life. And some of those I go back to, and it's like you can draw, inspiration, strength, whatever, motivation from them. You go back to that. It's those little moments. So totally see it. Love
you
it.
never know the impact you're going to have. And there's a story in the introduction about my paternal grandmother, my dad's mom. She was like my person I could talk to, and she died of ovarian cancer when I was 18. Actually, my graduation from high school was her last public event. And I grew up Wesleyan Methodist, which is kind of conservative. It's a mixture of Methodist and Pilgrim Holiness. So you were not allowed to wear pants to church. And she never wore makeup or had earrings or painted her nails a color. She would only paint them clear, right? So, and people would usually wear their hair in a bun and sleeves below the elbow. And like her neighbor didn't discover pants until after her spouse died. Made gardening a lot easier, right? So we had a healing service for her at church, where people would lay hands on her and pray. And if you believe in God and miracles, like you ask God for something and he grants your prayer, answers your prayer, you want the answer to be yes, physical healing, right? That wasn't the answer for her. And she went through this spiritual struggle for a little while. In her journal, she just has a couple notes about what me and my sister are doing. Like one of us is playing softball, one of us is doing this project in class. Nothing about her spiritual struggle. And I think for a lot of us, especially look at Facebook, we all like to talk about just the happy stuff and the successful things, but we learn the most from our mistakes and our struggles. How are we supposed to help other people learn if we aren't willing to share that? And I really kind of wish she had written down what her thoughts were, even if she felt like she wasn't supposed to, as a good Christian, have doubts like that, right? And have shared that with me. And maybe one day when I'm in heaven, I'll ask her, what was that like for you? Because I don't have the benefit of her message to me. And I can't go back now and ask her, right? And how many times do we lose somebody in our family and we go back and look at old photos and we're like, who's that? And who's that? And why are they in this photo? And what happened here? How many of those stories are we not getting passed down and we're losing?
Yeah, heavy stuff.
So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I know.
yeah.
I'm.
I love it
It
though.
is heavy
I love
stuff.
it. Well, we're gonna lighten it up a little bit. I'm gonna change
Okay.
topics. That really good stuff. So for anybody out there, I recommend go find this book, go grab it. It's got me thinking, do I need to, write down some stuff for my kids? And the answer is probably
Yeah.
yes. But
And Jonathan, if people are stuck at how to start with that, I do a mother's message workshop. And I just did one on Tuesday, and we did a Valentine's Mad Lib where all you had to do was fill in the blanks, and I give you a draft letter that you use to fill in the blanks. It made it a lot easier, I think, because it is heavy stuff and people don't remember. Hey, what if you had to talk about your values, right? Where would you start? If you've been driving the kids to soccer practice 5 days a week, maybe you haven't even thought about that in like 2 years. So we do a workshop with it. And then I can do workshops for small groups too, like if you wanted to create your own. So I don't want people to feel like they have to write a book, right? There's also Storyworth and a bunch of other type of programs and softwares out there people can use. And honestly, the response I've gotten is I found out how many people are actually doing this. Some people write a letter or a card to their kids every year on their birthday. So there's different ways that people do it. It's pretty cool.
awesome. Well, maybe now's a good time. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, maybe to get that sheet,
Yeah.
what's a good way to find you?
Oh, sure. So a good way to find me is you can find us at wilson-legal.com. So it's got a hyphen in the middle. Our phone number is 770-205-7861 is the main number. The website will have a different number because we use CallRail to track who comes to the website. And then you can also get a hold of us through email. And my email, or the best email to reach us at, I'm not going to give you mine, but is info at, and I have my team watching that email, info@wilson-legal.com. You can email info, and my assistant Saraya would probably reach out and give you a call and then see what time works for you. And Thursday nights, I'm not with my daughter, so she's at her dad's house. So Thursday and Friday is always open. On the other nights, she can come with me. If she's with me, usually she's my Vanna White, and she hands out the bingo prizes if we do bingo or like fun games and that kind of thing. So that's how it works.
Cool. So, all right, well, let's talk about, you talked about, your mistakes and struggles and all that. So let's talk about maybe some lessons you've learned over the years with your firm. So the way I like to sort of frame this is...
We're still learning.
Yeah, well,
because there's so
is
many.
Is there anything that you wish you had done sooner, or is there anything maybe you wish you had not done? And you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Well, there's a lot of the not done list. So the done sooner, I definitely had something come to mind right up front. And I would say hire a coach. Hire a coach. And you want to hire a coach that has a structure, somebody that knows where they're going, not just this is the next best thing we think you should do, but someone who has the ability to create a plan for you that you can work towards. I wish I had hired a coach sooner. If I had not waited until 2018, we would have been 10 years further down the road of progress and past my subconscious, boundaries. The other thing I've learned is that, professional progress and success only comes after personal growth. So you have to be mentally ready to handle a company that's a different size or number of people. But which things I hadn't done? I wish I hadn't signed a contract for printer leases with a really nice guy at my Rotary who didn't really do the printer leases part of the company and didn't know that they were going to lease me machines that were going to be completely stopped being produced 3 months after I signed a 5-year lease. Really wish I hadn't done that. That was 5 years of tech support hell.
Those long-term leases, man, you got to watch out for those in all forms. Yes. Yes. The short
I
term or the
wish I
month to
had.
months are the way to go if you can get them.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I did. This last time I still did a 5-year lease, but I chose a company that my IT company liked to work with. And because we're all online now, I have my IT company knows how to work with them and we could set up like the SharePoint connections and all that. So that helped.
Okay, so I want to shift again.
Yeah.
So you have
Sure.
you have this big mission to
Hmm.
serve 10,000 folks. So you got to go find them. You got to go get them. So what is your approach to marketing? How do you get your clients? How are you going to get these 10,000 or 9,500?
I wish I had really good answers for this right now, Jonathan, because I feel like I'm starting again from the very beginning this year. Because Google LSA stopped working for us. We had a zero point 0.6 ROI from November, December, January. My newspaper ad stopped working for us last year. So we're looking for 7 to 10 times ROI, which is return on investment for what we invest, right? So my newspaper ad I've been doing for 3 years just stopped working. The magazine ads really never gave anything to us. In-person group presentations have always been a great way for me to meet people. But when I was last year, I went on vacation to Yellowstone National Park in July, then got COVID, then couldn't have my surgery, so it got postponed. But I couldn't also do presentations because I couldn't be around other people that could infect me. So for 6 months last year, I couldn't do the in person grassroots kind of marketing that I've done before. Originally, I would say it was client referrals and it was professional referrals. 85% of clients were sending us business before 2018. And it was so many that I actually did a client appreciation event when my daughter was 2 to give my clients a chance to meet her because so many people had close relationships with me that they were kind of following my progress with a pregnancy and asking for pictures and all that. As you get bigger, those client referrals and professional referrals aren't enough to feed the machine, right? And so you've got to start doing other things. And I feel like I have bounced between 3, 4, 5 marketing vendors that I've actually hired and probably 15 that I've interviewed, vetted, and not hired in the last year and a half. And it's been a matter of evaluating, asking as many questions as you can, putting in place as many tracking and key performance indicators as you can, looking for the results, not getting the results, trying to rehabilitate, not succeeding, finding a new vendor, right? It's that same cycle. And now we've been in a cash crunch, which means we've been negative for so many months that I don't have the cash to actually do our direct mail idea for March. So we are just going back to referral sources. And what I've done is I've started using my networking events as a reason to reconnect with a lot of people. So I'm on the board of Keystone Village, which is building the very first independent living community for disabled adults in Forsyth County. And they just got the gift of property in December, and now we're raising money to raise the buildings. And so when I'm asking people to sponsor, or I bought 10 tickets to this event, it's on February 28th, and I want to invite 10 women who are growing their business and really excited about growth and, working together with other people and creating relationships so that we can do that and have fun at the same time, helping a good charity. And so I'm just going back to the phones and I'm writing endorsement letters. I'm sending out copies of my book with little cards. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is a good little nugget for your listeners. If you get a card that's the shape of an envelope, a number 13 envelope, and you put your business card at the bottom, you can write a thank you note at the top, and all of your information in your photo are easy to see. And so the person you're writing to remembers who you are and now feels obligated to either respond or help you with a referral, maybe top of mind for the next person they see that needs your services.
Nice. I like it. So let me ask real quick. So how do you deliver your service or charge your clients? I know in the estate planning space, there are different business models. I'm curious, do you have is it a one and done, or do you have some sort of like renewal update plan or subscription type component?
I have been looking at and working on drafts of a maintenance plan for probably the last 5 years. I have never published one because I've never been happy with it. And I think this year I finally discovered why, which is going to be good. The reason I don't like maintenance plans is that people don't like being incrementally charged for updates and they don't feel like a lot of updates are necessary. What I find that my clients are looking for in part is a sense of community. And so I want to give them opportunities to be together and to get educational components and then to have some access to the team and the firm as well. And we'll probably have different levels, right? But when you get a new bank account, you need our funding concierge to reach out to you and make sure that you got your trust added to that, right? Our clients want to know how their power of attorney agent is supposed to do their job. And usually their agents want to know that too. Hey, I've just been appointed. Now what the hell do I do? Right? Same for trustees, and especially trustees of special needs trusts. They really are looking for a lot more direction because you could really screw things up with Social Security if you do things wrong, or Department of Community Health. So I think that is what I'd like to put together this year and have that offered and then test it. As far as fees go, we are a flat fee firm and you pay up front, or you pay a 2 or 3 pay and we don't start work until the final payment is in. And I'll tell you why. I have tried a lot of different things, Jonathan. I always regret going away from the flat fee up front before work is started, because just like in other cases, like if you do family law, you can't take a divorce back if the client hasn't paid you. Oh, I'm sorry, you haven't paid me. Give me back that order. Right? You can't do that. And it's the same with estate planning, right? You really can't do that. And then people use that payment plan to manipulate you. So they'll delay their signing meeting so they don't have to bring you the second payment. And I've had that happen, and that messes with your cash flow.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been to a restaurant and you don't know what you want to eat, so you make them come back like 2 or 3 times, and then you finally know, and now you're out of their cadence. And now they take forever to get back to you because they have these other tables that came in while you were waiting to figure out and decide what you wanted. Law firms work the same way. In order to be profitable, my staff want to be paid every payroll period, and I need clients every month. And estate planning, it's this many clients every month, and every first of the month you're starting over again, right? And I have a long onboarding process. So people will call, they'll schedule, and they'll come in the first month. The second month we have a process 2 weeks. When you come in, we're going to schedule your design meeting, your review meeting 2 weeks after that, your signing meeting a week after that, because I want your documents protecting you. Everything we do is amendable. You don't have to read every paragraph before you sign. You're not going to do that when you buy your house. Why are you going to do that here? And then I give you 2 weeks to delivering funding. And then at delivering funding, you have 2 months after that meeting to review your documents and ask me any questions. I'll set aside a half a day to read you the trust and explain the IRS sections to you. I'm fine with that, but I don't want that to stall you out on getting your documents done. And from the delivery and funding meeting, you're working on funding. So that's our process. We can get you in and out in 6 weeks. We can shorten that if we need to, because I now have a drafting assistant in the Philippines. So I have a cobbler in the L situation. You can give me info today. I can have you a plan ready to sign tomorrow morning at 9.
Nice.
Well, not tomorrow because it's the weekend, but you know what I mean? And I'm not staying up at night for an hour and a half drafting it.
Well, it's very clear listening to you that you're very business oriented. You've figured this out. So I don't know if you already had that in you, if it was part of the coaching or maybe both. But yeah, it's impressive to listen to. So we've been going a while, and I know you have somewhere to go here soon. So we'll wrap up. But you mentioned earlier, your vision for your firm, so we know what that is. But you mentioned you had other things that you were interested in. So if you weren't practicing law, what would you be doing?
Well, I've already started working on that, which is probably no surprise to you. I would like to be a public speaker and a personal and business coach. So one of the things I've done is I've gone through in 2023-24, I started going through the IPEC curriculum, IPEC. It's a coaching curriculum that's been approved by the ICF, I think it's the International Coalition Coaching Foundation. When you finish their course, you have all your volunteer hours done and you can start getting paid to be a coach. I did it for 2 reasons. One, I wanted personal growth for myself. And 2, I knew I wanted to be a coach, but I wanted to also put together what I was hearing through How to Manage all the time, because they've used the same ideas. And so it really brought things together. But here's the third unexpected benefit is it's really helped me in sales, because I got a lot more comfortable asking open-ended questions. Because, we go through law school, that's a no-no. You should only ask questions you know the answer to. So I did that. The idea is the firm will run on its own. I'd like to set up, write 2 more books, do some speaking. And this is kind of weird, but I feel like there's an international women's conference somewhere in another country that has women that need to hear this message. And I'd like to work on becoming a better speaker, like having like a more concise order of things so that I can help women in another country. So I need to get training as a public speaker, and I need to look for opportunities to do public speaking and then be ready when that opportunity appears. Because what I've learned is if you're not ready, the opportunity shows up and you can't say yes, right? And if you read, what book was it, where opportunity usually shows up in overalls looking like hard work. So if you keep going in the direction where you think you're supposed to be going, then when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and you just have to have faith that the right people are going to come into your circle. Like, I have faith that you and I ran into each other when we did for a reason, right? There had to be something.
Well, we hit it
God
off.
or the universe.
We hit it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt very natural. It felt very natural.
It did.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun.
So that's the plan.
You know, again, I like what you're doing, and I think you'll be very successful on that speaking, coaching pursuit. So definitely do it.
Thank you.
If anybody listening says, hey, why don't you come speak to us, reach out.
I would love to.
You know, give your info email again so they can have it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it's wilson-legal.com. You can ask us for a time or a chance to talk about setting something up by emailing info@wilson-legal.com. And the number is 770-205-7861. And I will fly anywhere to talk about Mother's Message in the book. It's not limited like my law license to the state of Georgia. So we can actually offer that kind of workshop to estate planning firms that are anywhere, which is pretty exciting.
Awesome.
Or groups. Yeah.
Well, Michelle, this has been really fun. Again, I love your book. I am going to finish it, and maybe I'll write one too. So,
well, I am here if you have any questions or get stuck or just want somebody to sit at that table at Wild Wings with you so you don't look like the lonely nerd with the laptop. Happy to be a co-laptop nerd with you if you'd like one.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, enjoy the weekend, and we will be in touch for sure. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.